So I would just say, as you find yourself around more and more of my family, you may want to hold your corner a bit. And then, understand the privilege you're enjoying when you're with them. Rather than try to, because I was all prepared, we have standards in our family. But Nikita, she didn't have to say a word. We left it to you, and here you are.
Well, that worked in her favor.
No, the truth worked in her favor.
No, she did what she did.
You never said what she did, and then you changed to say what she did. Well, but in any event, we tried. So, how was the concert?
Oh, it was wonderful.
Was Nikita the mistress of ceremony?
At one point, she came up. I had gone to do something else, and she came out and she done her thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and she was, like I said, souped up.
Evangelist.
And it went over quite well, know. And I'm going to say something. I believe that everyone in the auditorium had a fantastic time. And the presentation was number one.
Oh, excellent.
The presentation is very important for any event. And it was different. They had an aisle where you came in, they were playing music, and you had dancers on each side of the red carpet.
Oh, Soul Train? They had the Soul Train?
Similar.
Okay.
Similar, but it was to some really upbeat music and everything. And everybody came down doing that step, and you had the cameraman at the end of it.
Oh.
I done my thing.
Of course you did.
Oh, yes, I did.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great. First class, Ronald Virgil, I wish you all the best with your album. And I'm looking forward to hearing more of the music on a regular basis.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, my Saturday was extremely positive. I had the Southampton Parish Council Easter egg hunt out at Whale Bay Park. And let me tell you, May, there are very, very few things that I do that are as fulfilling as the roles I play with Southampton Parish Council. I got to tell you, okay? Because on the one hand, I sit on the scholarship committee, and so for families who apply for scholarship, it's only a positive thing having that ability to support.
Right.
The World Book Day, where we go to the preschools and Dalton Tucker and Port Royal, and we give free books to P1 and P2, and we read.
Right.
Just nothing negative about that.
Okay.
And the Easter egg hunt. Let me just give you some numbers here. The members of the Southampton Parish Council regularly hide something like 700 little Easter eggs stuffed with candies, pencils with positive affirmations on them, erasers that say incredible, good job, well done.
Right.
Little ink stamps that temporary ink you can stamp on things, right?
Yes.
So Whale Bay Park is covered. And those children get there early, right? And then it's the kind of countdown, and this year, you had to wait, a few people were late. And when I say late, like 3 minutes after 2.
Oh, wow.
That was late. So we had to hold off while the children ran for us. So I was telling, come on, run. The children were running with the baskets. So we were all in line. And then at 3, 2, 1, they all went for it. There was over 60 children there.
Okay.
And I had to pop in and out.
Right.
I got back to the spot at like 5 to 3, and it was packed up.
Okay.
Like, it is, you ever see, I don't know, it's just a full-on run, hide, catch, take, and then going.
Okay.
Right? So
the ages were from
2 to 10.
2 to 10.
Ages 2 to 10, yeah. And so for the really, really young ones, maybe age 2, maybe 3, maybe 2 to 4, I think we do it. It's really in tall grass.
Right.
But the ones 5 to 10, some in the palm trees, some in the casuarina, under the roots, under leaves, in tall grass, so it's...
Make it a little easier for them.
Well, no, more difficult for the older children.
I'm talking about the younger ones.
Oh, yes, of course, definitely. But it's always well attended, and
Well, it sounds like it was well attended.
Yes.
But that's the unfortunate, because there were other Easter egg hunts going on that same day.
Well, actually, yes, we knew of one that seemed to pop up out of nowhere. I guess the Saturday before Easter is a good time to do it.
Yeah.
Is school
perfect
out?
time.
Let me know. Is school out last week or this week?
No, it's this week.
Okay. Okay. But no, it was. We had a ball.
Okay.
And
good.
cheers to council members Kirby and Sperling, who take the lead on this.
Okay.
But in truth, they might not be aware of this. The inspiration was our current chair, Stacey Lee Williams. It was her idea for the Easter egg hunt, I believe. And so away we go.
There you go.
Felt really good. So what's going on? What's on your mind, man?
Last week. It's good to move on, hopefully. Because I'm still being pulled aside about CARICOM.
Oh dear.
You know, but what more is there to say? We've covered it. Not unless something else comes up. But we're moved on. Honestly, I think the information going forward now would be transparent and honest. So I'm looking forward to hearing what anyone has to say. I understand there's going to be some town hall meetings, and if there are, I will attend and see what's being discussed.
Mate, we may have to have a staff meeting tomorrow.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What happened? What happened now?
Well, for our regular listeners, right?
Yes.
One of our things is that we don't discuss what's going to be on the show.
Uh-huh.
And so I have CARICOM stuff to read. But you just said, so it's time to move on. Yep, I think we moved on, and there's going to be town hall meetings, and I think any other information. I'm looking going, oh boy. CB guys might need to talk. Maybe we should talk before shows.
No, I kind of like not knowing, because then...
Well, now what do? You've told me what you think the preference is.
Well, no, and unless something else comes up.
Good answer.
You understand? So I think we're there. If it's something else that's
something did come up.
Good. I'm all ears.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you.
Sure.
There's I bought in some kind of around the world stuff. You know, like it's the week before Easter, and I didn't bring much of that stuff. I'm going to do that Wednesday and Thursday.
Okay.
But I've begun my research.
Right.
And let me say, I've been inspired. I've definitely been inspired.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but you can. Yeah, say it.
No. Well, I have a giveaway to do, and what we're going to do it come Wednesday and Thursday. We're giving away 2 kites during our segment. Okay.
Just for the record, that's all Willie.
We had a staff meeting earlier.
Oh, yes.
And let me tell you, I was ready to riot at
No, he wasn't. I let him know was I'm a nerd for a reason. I'm an introvert for a reason.
Okay.
Okay.
So
it happens.
Look forward to that. Starting tomorrow not tomorrow, on Wednesday and on Thursday, we will be giving away 2 kites on each day. Okay?
So let me ask a question. We were kind of joking. I do have some CARICOM. Something did come up.
Right.
But I also bought some kind of round the world, unconnected stuff or disconnected stuff. What do you think? CARICOM, and then we'll round off CARICOM and then end the show with this other, I would actually say lighter stuff.
Right.
Or do we do the lighter stuff now and do CARICOM?
Let's do CARICOM, because if you do it last, it might be another continuation.
Good point. Okay. So, what happened really is I thought I would advise, just, you know how we do what we do.
Right.
Okay. And so I have to tell you something that happened and bring you up to date and then get us in trouble. Are you cool with that?
Again?
Yep.
Okay, I'm kind of getting used to it.
I know. That's why I'm saying. So, but this one, this is good trouble. We'll get in good trouble. Well, it's all good. We only get in good trouble, don't we?
Yeah, of course.
All right. So let me tell you something that happened last week, Wednesday, and then Thursday.
Okay.
And then on the Wednesday, Thursday, that pretty much was it. Okay. The country of South Africa brought a resolution to the United Nations.
Right.
And in short, this was the title of the resolution, which I have here. Let me just say the title is Declaration of the Trafficking of Enslaved Africans and Racialized Chattel Enslavement of Africans, as the gravest crime against humanity.
Man. Yes.
So let me repeat that. South Africa brought a resolution for the UN to accept that to make a declaration of the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity. So basically saying the slave trade was the gravest crime against humanity.
Yes.
And the resolution is 7 pages. I would like to read the whole 7 pages.
Right.
I will not. I do not think our listeners would appreciate that. But aside from the power of some of these words, there's some educational stuff in here that I think is worthy of us reading. I am going to make a point. I'm not just dealing with this just for the resolution.
Okay.
It does get applicable in a moment, but I think it's important, particularly in a majority black country, in a country that had the slave trade here en masse, in that we were a spot for the trade of slaves, and also we had slavery here.
Yes.
And the fact that we only abolished slavery when the UK did as a colony. So I think it's a resolution that's worthy of our attention. And it was first published on the 17th of March. So if you go, anybody wants to, UnitedNations.org or UN.org, or just Google resolution against slavery, it'll pop up.
Yes.
And you'll see it. Now, the words of this resolution, these are some of the things that I'm going to just read for some time, for a moment, because I think it's important.
Right.
Okay? So this is under the declaration. So after you have the title, it says, the General Assembly, so the of the United Nations, recalling the blah, 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 reaffirms the, okay, you understand?
Yes.
So I'm just going to go from the reaffirming part. And the General Assembly, reaffirming the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which proclaimed that no one shall be held in slavery or servitude, and that slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. Reaffirming also the principles of equality and non-discrimination in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and encouraging respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. Underscoring that the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights reaffirms the prohibition of slavery and the slave trade. Reaffirming the Durban Declaration and Program of Action, which acknowledged, that was in 2001. Paulu was one of the chief organizers of that, by the way. But the reaffirming the Durban Declaration and Program of Action, which acknowledged that slavery and the slave trade, including the transatlantic slave trade, were appalling tragedies in the history of humanity, not only because of their abhorrent barbarism, but also in terms of their magnitude, organized nature, and especially their negation of the essence of the victims. Further acknowledging that slavery and the slave trade are a crime against humanity and should always have been so, especially the transatlantic slave trade. Recalling the commitment set out in this Declaration on Future Generations to eliminate all forms of persistent historical and structural inequalities. Recognizing how little is known about the 400-year-long transatlantic slave trade and its lasting consequences felt throughout the world, and welcoming the importance of continuing education and awareness raising, and the increased attention of the General Assembly commemoration has brought to the issue, including the raising of its profile in many states. Recalling the erection of the permanent memorial to honor the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade, the Ark of Return, at United Nations headquarters. Taking note further of the Organization of African Unity Abuja Proclamation on reparations for African enslavement, colonization, and neo-colonization of 1993, and the African Union Assembly Decision 934 of the 16th of February 2025 on the qualification of slavery, deportation, and colonization as crimes against humanity and genocide against the peoples of Africa. Taking note of the designation by the African Union of 2025 as the Year of Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through reparations, and of the period 2026 to 2036 as a decade of action on reparations and African heritage, as well as the Accra Declaration on reparations and racial healing and relevant initiatives by the African Union. Recalling that the large-scale trafficking of enslaved Africans marked a profound rupture in human history whose consequences have extended across centuries and continents, and that the 15th century marked the critical beginning of the exceptional and dark history of the capture, forced transportation, and racialized chattel enslavement of the people of Africa through the first known mass state-sponsored auction of captured Africans taken from Na, Taida, and the Bay of Ogrin. Recognizing that for 400 years, the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans forcibly captured, commodified, and transported millions of African men, women, and children, constituting the largest forced migration in history and one of the longest running systems of organized mass human exploitation in recorded history, with millions more dying during capture, detention, and trafficking across the seas. Recognizing that Africans and people of African descent have continuously resisted, contested, and litigated the crimes of slavery and the slave trade from their inception, including through the more than 6th century Africana abolitionist tradition, early acts of resistance and testimony, state diplomacy, armed struggles, and the strategic use of courts and petitions to assert human rights, dignity, autonomy over their bodies, and territorial sovereignty. Taking note of the progressive codification of the racialized chattel enslavement of Africans across the world, including, listen to this list, co-pilot, these are the international elements that brought slavery to the fore. The papal, right? Yep. The papal bull, Dum Diversas of 18 June 1452, and the Romanus Pontifex of 1455, which authorized the reduction of African persons to perpetual slavery. The Portuguese, you heard that name, right?
Yeah, Portuguese.
The Portuguese, Pecado da Indias, Commercial Standard of July 1513, which legally calculated enslaved Africans as accumulation units, such that African women, children, and the elderly were quantified as fractional parts of a prime male slave. The Spanish Asencio de Negros, formalized in August 1518, which transformed the African person into a taxable commodity under a state-licensed commercial monopoly. The Charter of the Dutch West India Company of June 1621, which applied Roman Dutch law to categorize Africans as res mobiles, movable furniture or property. The Barbados Slave Code of May 1661, which formally classified Africans as chattel property under English law. The French Code Noir of March 1685, which legally defined enslaved Africans as mobiles, furniture or property, stripped of all rights. And the Virginia statutory principle of partus sequitur ventrem. Status follows the womb. Which for the time created the unprecedented biologically inheritable status of property through the womb of enslaved African mothers. The children of enslaved African mothers were property before they were born.
Wow.
That's Virginia. That was just one clause. Continuing now, recalling the emergence of certain legal challenges and judicial developments in the 18th century, which questioned the legality and morality of systems of chattel enslavement of Africans. Recalling also the final act of the Congress of Vienna, entitled The Declaration of the Powers of the Abolition of the Slave Trade of 8th of February 1815, in which the plenipotentiaries recognized the slave trade as repugnant to the principles of humanity and universal morality, and in the name of their sovereigns expressed their wish of putting an end to the scourge, which has so long desolated Africa, degraded Europe, and affected humanity. Just in case you didn't get that, that was in Vienna, 1815. There was a conference held, and the signatures, the people at that conference signed against slavery, 1815. Taking note that the African Charter on Human and People's Rights reaffirmed that every individual shall have the right to respect of the dignity inherent in a human being and to the recognition of his or her legal status. They then go on, there's some more, reiterating that the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans violated fundamental human rights and constituted a crime against humanity. Reaffirming that crimes related to the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans are not subject to statutory limitations. I'm going to come back.
Good. Okay.
Taking note of a fundamental principle reflected across African legal and moral traditions that, in quotes, a crime does not rot, and affirming that there can be no statutory limitations for crimes against humanity, and that grave crimes generate continuing obligations until addressed through truth, justice, and reparation. Recognizing that the inception of racialized chattel enslavement was historically unprecedented in its legal and structural design, being the first global regime to codify human beings and their descendants as inheritable, alienable, and perpetual property, to convert human reproduction into a mechanism of capital accumulation, and to institutionalize racial hierarchy as a governing principle of international political and economic order. Taking note of the inception of the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement as world-breaking and world-redefining. Recognizing the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as a crime whose moral, legal, social, and economic logics continue to inform structural racism, racial inequalities, underdevelopment, marginalization, and socioeconomic disparities which disproportionately affect Africans and people of African descent in all parts of the world. Recognizing that the legacies of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade persist today in the form of structural racism, racial inequalities, underdevelopment, marginalization, and socioeconomic disparities affecting Africans and people of African descent across the world, the General Assembly unequivocally condemns the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of African slavery and the transatlantic slave trade as the most inhumane and enduring injustice against humanity. Declares that the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity, and emphasizes the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity by reason of the definitive break in world history, scale, duration, systemic nature, brutality, and enduring consequences that continue to structure the lives of all people through racialized regimes of labor, property, and capital. Invites the African Union, the Caribbean Community, the Organization of American States, and other relevant regional and sub-regional organizations to collaborate with member states and the United Nations entities in developing frameworks for dialogue, cooperation, and action on reparatory justice and reconciliation. Now, it's 7 pages, so I didn't read a lot. Well, sorry. People may have thought I read a lot, but I just say I didn't read a lot from the resolution.
I want to bring something to your attention. Often when we're talking about the transatlantic slave trade, not much is mentioned about the Arabs and the slave trade that they had started over on the western side of Africa, namely Mozambique.
Yep.
And we hear very little about what happened with that. And I know the Portuguese were involved with that as well.
Yep. Well, glad you raised that. It's coming.
Okay.
Okay, so that was the motion. That was the resolution that was adopted. Okay, and to say it was adopted, it was. I will give you the numbers.
Okay.
The resolution, drafted by South Africa, driven by Ghana. So Ghana and Mahama, the Ghanaian president, drove this. And there were 123 votes in favor. 52 countries abstained. And 3 countries voted against.
Unbelievable.
Take a guess of 2. I bet you can guess 2 of the 3 countries who abstained. Who voted against.
Britain.
Nope, they abstained.
Okay. The U.S.
Absolutely. The U.S., Israel, and Argentina. Now, woohoo, shock, right?
No.
If anybody looks at Argentina's football team, they'll understand.
No, that probably also look at the genocide.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the genocide, the Nazis went to Argentina after they were rounded up in Germany. Like, Argentina, one thing, being true,
well,
as is the U.S.
As history would tell us that it was a concerted effort to get rid of blacks in Argentina.
That's what I'm saying. Right? So, what I've done is I've gone on and read some of, taken down just a few articles that came out of the UN when this happened. So the 25th of March, which is Wednesday, this statement came out. UN resolution urges reparations for slavery's historical wrongs. Applause erupted at the UN General Assembly Hall on Wednesday as member states adopted a resolution declaring the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity. The resolution, spearheaded by Ghana, received 123 votes in favor. 3 countries, Argentina, Israel, and the U.S., voted against, and 52 abstained. Here's a quote. Today we come together in solemn solidarity to affirm truth and pursue a route to healing and reparative justice, said Ghana's President John Mahama, speaking ahead of the vote on behalf of the 54-member African group, the largest regional bloc at the UN. For more than 400 years, millions of people were stolen from Africa, put in shackles, and shipped to the New World to toil in cotton fields and sugar and coffee plantations under scorching heat and the crack of the whip. Denied their basic humanity and even their own names, they were forced to endure generations of exploitation with repercussions that reverberate today, including persistent anti-black racism and discrimination. The resolution emphasized, in quotes, the trafficking of enslaved Africans and the racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity by reason of the definitive break in world history. Let me pause there. When they say a break in world history, okay, I think that is one of the most clever, brilliant things I've seen. What it says that the world was turning, right? Africa as a continent was doing this thing, as was North America, Europe, whatever. But the slave trade stopped, if you will, that natural development. It stopped the world history to inject this action for 400 years. So that history, this resolution is saying that slave trade broke world history, because it definitely broke the continent's history.
I see.
So scale, the size of it, duration, it lasted 4 centuries, systemic nature, right? The shipping, the laws, the global trade, the brutality, I don't have to give examples of that, and enduring consequences that continue to structure the lives of all people through racialized regimes of labor, property, and capital. Here's a quote for you. There are spirits of the victims of slavery present in this room at the moment, and they are listening for one word only: justice. The person who said that was Esther Phillips, the first poet laureate of Barbados. It affirmed the importance of addressing historical wrongs affecting Africans and people of the diaspora in a manner that promotes justice, human rights, dignity, and healing, while emphasizing that claims for reparations represent a concrete step towards remedy. I'm now going to give you quotes. Wow. The text was, in quotes, highly problematic in countless respects, Ambassador Dan Negria, U.S. representative to the UN Economic and Social Council, said prior to the vote. He regretted that Washington, quotes, must once again remind this body that the United Nations exists to maintain international peace and security and was not founded to advance narrow specific interests and agendas, to establish niche international days, or to create new costly meeting and reporting mandates. Furthermore, the U.S. does not recognize a legal right to reparations for historical wrongs that were not illegal under international law at the time they occurred.
Say that again?
Oh, really?
Yeah, seriously.
Sure. He regretted, this is the ambassador to the UN, he regretted that Washington, in quotes, must once again remind this body that the United Nations exists to maintain international peace and security and was not founded to advance narrow specific interests and agendas, to establish niche international days, or to create new costly meeting and reporting mandates. Furthermore, the U.S. does not recognize a legal right to reparations for historical wrongs that were not illegal under international law at the time they occurred. I'll continue. The horrors of slavery echoed in the General Assembly Hall as member states commemorated the International Day to remember its victims. The slave trade and slavery stand among the gravest violations of human rights in human history, an affront to the very principles enshrined in the Charter of our United Nations and Universal Declaration of Human Rights themselves, born in part from these injustices, said Assembly President Annalena Baerbock. The countries where enslaved Africans were taken from also suffered a hollowing out, having lost entire generations who potentially could have helped them to prosper. It was, to put in colder terms, a mass resource extraction, she said. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for the confronting slavery's lasting legacies of inequality and racism. Now, we must remove the persistent barriers that prevent so many people of African descent from exercising their rights and realizing their potential, he said. We must commit fully and without hesitation to human rights, equality, and the inherent worth of every person. In this regard, the Second International Decade for People of African Descent and the African Union's Decade of Reparations are significant. He urged countries to use them to drive action to eradicate systemic racism, ensure reparatory justice, and accelerate inclusive development, marked by equal access to education, health, employment, housing, and a safe environment. But far bolder actions by many more states are needed, he added. This includes commitments to respect African countries' ownership of their own natural resources and steps to ensure their equal participation and influence in the global financial architecture and the UN Secretary General. The poet laureate of Barbados, Esther Phillips, read from some of her works, including a piece about a young girl walking on the grounds of a former sugar plantation, not understanding its historical significance as our ancestors buried there looked on. Because for them and the world, there can be no peace without justice, reparatory justice, and that call is answered only when words are turned into action. The question is, what will you do?
Wow.
Okay, the reason I brought this up, really, aside from the fact that we were, Bermuda was in the slave trade. Bermuda was deeply in the slave trade. And I just need to tell you the development.
Okay.
Okay? So, the United Kingdom did not vote in favor of this UN resolution. And the UK released a statement as to why they didn't.
Okay. That should be interesting.
Let me just say this. A couple of interesting things about it to us here in Bermuda.
Yes.
Number one, this statement was released, and I'm going to deal with an issue that the U.S. also said. I'm going to, in fact, I have it here. Have it there. But the person who delivered this statement was Ambassador James Kariuki. He is the UK Charge d'Affaires to the UN. And on the UN, yeah, you got me. That gentleman, his father was Kenyan and his mother Moroccan. Do you know what he looks like? Could you imagine what he looks like? He would look like a black Bermudian. And he delivered the statement I'm about to read.
Okay.
Under the title, UN Explanation of Vote on the Declaration of the Trafficking of Enslaved Africans and as the gravest crime against humanity. Ready?
Go ahead.
And this was taken from gov.uk. So if anybody wants to go on gov.uk, well, it's a long thing, but you put in government speeches or the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, I'm sure you'll get there. Or you can Google the guy's name, James Kariuki, Kariuki. Kariuki. All right. Ready?
Yeah.
Here's his statement. The UN recognizes the UK recognizes the gravity of the issues addressed in this resolution and welcomes the opportunity to set out its position. We have repeatedly recognized the abhorrent nature of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade, which inflicted untold harm and misery on millions of people over many decades. Decades, not centuries. Sorry, I'm not going to keep that. Let me just read it as it is, because that's not fair. Its horrors were profound, and its legacy continues to leave deep scars today. The UK also believes that only by acknowledging and discussing collectively the most painful elements of the history that we share with other nations, including the transatlantic slave trade, can we come together in a spirit of solidarity and mutual respect to respond to the challenges that we all face today. The UK remains committed to that goal. That is why we engage constructively throughout the negotiations on this resolution in the hopes of reaching a consensus-based text. However, despite our efforts, our concerns have not been taken on board. The UK continues to disagree with the fundamental propositions of the text and therefore regrettably cannot vote in favor of it. Firstly, the UK is firmly of the view that we must not create a hierarchy of historical atrocities. Doing so simplifies the complexity and vast scale of suffering endured in different contexts. It risks diminishing the experiences of communities whose trauma and suffering was felt just as strongly. No single set of atrocities should be regarded as more or less significant than another. We should approach all historical injustices with the same seriousness, empathy, and respect to ensure that no one group is made to feel that their suffering is being overshadowed or treated as secondary. Furthermore, it is essential and integral to the rule of law that the formation and evolution of international law is governed by clear and well-defined principles. The principles of intertemporality and non-retroactivity are long-standing tenets of international law. They are essential to ensuring legal stability. According to the intertemporal rule, the applicable law is the law of the relevant time. International courts and tribunals have routinely upheld these principles. There is equally no duty to provide reparation for historical acts that were not, at the time those acts were committed, violations of international law. These principles cannot be circumvented by recourse to the concept of continuing harms. The UK welcomes that states have developed international law such that today slavery and the slave trade are rightly prohibited by treaties and under customary international law, and enslavement is now recognized as a constituent element of a crime against humanity. Nonetheless, it is important to acknowledge with deep regret that the prohibitions on slavery, the slave trade, and what are now considered crimes against humanity had not yet been established in international law at the time of the transatlantic slave trade. None of the recognized sources of international law, as set out in Article 38 of the Statute of International Court of Justice, identify a prohibition on slavery and the slave trade until the 20th century. The UK appreciates that Ghana, on behalf of the African Union, consistently stressed that this resolution was not to be read as a legal document. This was restated by the drafters at every informal consultation. In this context, the UK and others offered specific language to move the text away from legal to political discourse, while still reflecting the sheer gravity and horror of the acts. Member states also suggested the text should be considered by the Sixth Committee. Again, this was met with the response that this was a political declaration. The UK is keen to underscore this point on the African Union's intention, while we continue to regret the failure to accept language that would have put the matter beyond doubt. And that was published on Wednesday.
Wow.
To break that down for you, okay, the U.S. said, right, quite bluntly, we aren't paying reparations for something that wasn't a crime at the time.
Yeah.
The UK just said the same thing. The UK wouldn't even sign a non-binding UN resolution saying slavery was the gravest crime against humanity.
Got you.
They wouldn't even sign it. And so the two principles that they brought up, one is intertemporal, and I'm going to read a little bit. Let me just deal with that a bit. According to the principle of intemporality, a legal question has to be assessed on the basis of the laws in effect at the relevant time. This is aimed at ensuring legal certainty and is thus, in many cases, desirable. However, the application of this principle can sometimes mean, for example, that crimes committed during the colonization of Africa and South America are assessed not in line with today's legal standards, but rather in accordance with the racist and discriminating laws of the colonizing powers of the time. German courts recognize exceptions to the application of this principle in some constellations, specifically to avoid the application of Nazi-era laws or the laws of East Germany. In other areas, including when it comes to the legal classification of colonial crimes, historical injustices continue to be concealed, with legitimized through the application of the principle of intertemporality. Basically, and I can give you another example that they used here in Samoa. Not Samoa, Germany used in another country. So essentially, the biggest problem to the reparation movement is that the countries who exploited and made the most money are saying it was not a crime at the time, and so there are no reparations to be paid. And the UK released that statement. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to just read a little bit from this article. So I did look in the UK media, the left-wing media, to just see what was said. And I read there's one. Let me just jump. I have two articles here, right? And one talks a bit about it, about the trade. But let me read this other one. This was from Friday in The Guardian. Talks about John Mahama, who's the Ghanaian president, came back. It says, the resolution to declare the practice as the gravest crime against humanity passed with a decisive majority at the UN General Assembly and has been largely welcomed across Africa. Yet the details of the tally reveal a world still deeply divided on the gravity of the sin of enslaving more than 15 million people as chattel over the course of 400 years. Thus, the 123 states who voted for it were just as noteworthy as those who did not. Most of the assembly was in support, including Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, most of Latin America, all former victims, as well as the Arab world, who themselves have the dark history of trans-Saharan slavery under their belt. Does that answer your...
Yes, it does.
Okay, I knew it was coming, that's why when you said it, I said, wow, check my mate. Russia called it a long overdue recognition. Russia.
I'm going to tell you something about Russia, right? Russia has been I would say, at the pinnacle of being honest. No, seriously. As much as they, I noticed in the news, they try to make them seem like the real bear cubs.
Oh, yeah.
You understand? But they have been up front and center with a lot of, I'll go far if I say issues, but when it came to recognition of blacks, they have been forefront in it. And I also noticed that, I believe it was in Africa, where they even went to help the Africans in a lot of the states there. So, they're not as bad as people would well...
Depends on your news source, right?
Yeah.
You watch BRICS News, watch Al Jazeera, and CNN, and everything else. But then you read it all, then you'll get,
Yeah.
Your truth.
Yes.
Russia called it a long overdue recognition. Perhaps because of their history of subjugation of indigenous people and perpetuation of chattel slavery, the Western Bloc of Australia, Canada, the UK, and the EU states all abstained in the vote, electing to postpone their Day of Atonement.
Oh.
You hear it like that?
Yes.
Their Day of Atonement. Postpone their Day of Atonement. The three states to publicly vote against the resolution were Argentina, where 2/3 of the value of all imports arriving at Buenos Aires between 1580 and 1640 were enslaved Africans. Did you hear that?
Yes.
2/3 of the value of all imports were Africans in Argentina, in Buenos Aires in particular.
Big business.
Israel and the U.S., where 11 states ceded rather than obey the Emancipation Proclamation freeing enslaved Africans. The U.S. ambassador to the UN Economic and Social Council, Dan Negrea, I didn't tell you this part before.
Okay.
I saved it because it's in this article.
Right.
Strap in, mate. Get ready.
I'm ready.
The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations Economic and Social Council, Dan Negrea, took pains to point out the unrelated claim that Donald Trump, in quotes, has done more for black Americans than any other president, and stressed that Washington does not recognize a legal right to reparations for historical wrongs that were not illegal under international law at the time they occurred. Human rights advocates believe the collective objection to a resolution that is not legally binding is because its opponents know it opens the door to reparation payments and acknowledgments. Before the vote, there was palpable fear in the room. Representatives of EU states spoke against what they considered retroactive application of international law, but there was also an unspoken desire to censor the past. The Vatican's permanent observer to the UN mentioned examples of papal condemnations of slavery in a speech before the vote and called the resolutions a partial narrative. Ironically, he skipped the mention of a more impactful papal action. It was Pope Nicholas V's edicts in 1452 and 1455 approving enslavement of non-Christians in Africa by the Portuguese that facilitated transatlantic slavery. Inevitably, questions are being asked about what happens next. But after securing such a historic win in the face of heavyweight opposition, Ghana and the African Union will feel energized to continue this long fight. On Wednesday, the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, called for far bolder action. All eyes will now be on the African Union, which has called 2026 to 36 its decade of reparations and named Mahama as its reparations champions to find creative ways to extract reparative justice even in the face of stonewalling from the West. We travel this long road, each step guided by a desire to be better and to do better, each step bringing us closer to the kind of world we want to leave for our children. Mahama said in his speech at the UN General Assembly.
Okay. Wow.
Okay. Which brings me to why I've even raised all of this. CARICOM released a statement.
Okay. Wait, let me sit up properly. Go ahead.
2 were released. And remember when we were talking earlier about whether we were going to leave CARICOM? Is something to come up? This is the resolution. This is what's come up. Okay. So anybody's listening at the beginning of the show, we're now, when Willie said unless something comes up, this is the thing. So the UN has a resolution calling slavery the gravest crime against humanity. I mean, seriously? Like, that's even a question? Is there any other crime against humanity that's more grave? It couldn't possibly be. There isn't. Okay. But the UK refuses to vote in favor. Now, I would say couldn't figure out whether I should say this part first or that part first. So I'll go with CARICOM first. On Wednesday, this is on CARICOM.org if anybody wants to check out the statement. This was on the 25th, and the second one I'm going to read was on the 27th. I think was Friday. So Wednesday and Friday. The 25th. CARICOM welcomes adoption of a UN resolution on slavery and transatlantic trafficking of enslaved Africans. The Caribbean community welcomes the adoption of the historic United Nations resolution, in quotes, declaration of the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity by the UN General Assembly on the 25th of March, 2026. All CARICOM member states voted in favor of the Ghana-led resolution. The resolution declares transatlantic trafficking and chattel enslavement as humanity's gravest crime due to the scale, duration, brutality, and lasting consequences, calls for the establishment of reparations frameworks, emphasizes remembrance, research, and education, and promotes healing and justice. CARICOM has consistently advocated for the international community to take decisive action to repair the harmful legacies of African chattel enslavement and transatlantic trafficking, and will continue to work collaboratively for the implementation of the resolution. The resolution was symbolically adopted on the International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery and the Transatlantic Slave Trade, marked annually on the 25th of March. 2 days later, a statement that Professor Hilary Beckles released. I won't read the whole thing because we've heard it a lot. But Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, he's the chair of CARICOM's Reparations Commission, has described the adoption of the 80th UN General Assembly of the resolution designating the trafficking of enslaved Africans as the gravest crime against humanity as a historic landmark decision. He goes on, as a renowned Caribbean historian and leading global advocate for reparatory justice, Professor Beckles expressed his delight at the outcome of the vote, which he said was potentially, in quotes, a game changer at the United Nations, providing a stronger platform to strategically advance coordinated diplomatic strategy to address reparations for Africans and people of African descent through this critical intergovernmental body. Under the leadership of the African Union and CARICOM, 123 countries spoke resoundingly with one voice, affirming the grave injustice, recognizing the suffering and crimes against humanity committed against Africans for over 400 years, he said. The adoption of the resolution on the International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery and the Transatlantic Slave Trade is a victory for the millions of Africans who endured the horrors of chattel enslavement and who always resisted the negation of their humanity and treatment as chattel or property.
CARICOM.
Right. So, let me go back a bit now.
Right.
And a resolution came, the UK abstained, and then they gave justification. The UK might be the largest colonial holding state currently. And those states were largely built by the slave trade and enslaved Africans.
Yes.
And yet, they still felt they could not vote in favor of that resolution. Here's the thing for me. It is now Monday. The UK statement came out on Wednesday.
Yes.
And I would have, in fact, I expected to hear something in the news along these lines. We are saddened and disappointed that the UK government has chose to abstain from such an important resolution recognizing the trauma and the violence committed against Africans in the diaspora. Given the United Kingdom was blah, 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 and paid this amount of money that was only repaid, we, the government of Bermuda, called on the UK government to, right?
Yes.
You get to say that if you're the child to your parent.
Yes.
You with me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay. So we're a colony. We're overseas territory.
Yes.
And we could, like the premier could release that statement on Thursday, boom, or Friday, or Saturday, or Sunday, or today. Okay. It could have said something about that and given Bermudians and English it couldn't have been more clear line of demarcation between their history and our history.
Yes.
Of our values and their values. Of what matters to the vast majority population of this country and what they care about. Okay? I was going to go through and rip this man's statement apart with some of the crap that he was saying, the UK guy. Okay? And I still may. But the point I'm getting at is as an associate member of CARICOM, we could say something on our own.
Yes.
The statement from the Bermuda government might have been made to Bermuda Broadcasting, but been picked up on the internet, let's say, and gone somewhere.
Yes.
Even though it was just a message to us. Okay? That's tricky diplomacy, right? I was just talking to my people. No, I didn't send it out there on the interwebs, right? So you do that. We cannot, because of the letter of entrustment, associate ourselves with CARICOM's statement. Because CARICOM's statement saying the General Assembly did this thing and it's a good thing goes against the UK's interest of showing, right? And so we can show difference between the UK at the UN level.
Yes.
If we were a full member of CARICOM, not made one difference.
Right.
Under the letter of entrustment, it says we can't even discuss things that deal with foreign affairs. And if there's a statement like this one, we would have to disassociate ourselves from the statement. But guess what? We can make a statement right now.
Yes.
As strong as we want to. You could actually, if I was the premier, I'd have leaked, well, not leaked, I'd have told the media. I've asked the governor for an urgent meeting to explain his government's actions. Right? I would have flipped the script to show.
Yes.
You want to get independent? Or you want to be a member of CARICOM? It's now.
Yes.
You don't wear the dress and then say, I'm pretty. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You don't clean your shoes. You prepare.
You are absolutely.
If you're legit, you're legit.
Yes.
This principle of intertemporal I read up this weekend, right?
Yes.
And I'm saying, okay, let me explain something to you. In law, right, there is continuing harm. So you could do something to someone today, right, and under certain limitations, it's 6 years. Other crimes, there are no limitations, right? But they're saying this wasn't a crime. Let me tell you one other thing about this. I was going to bring in the speeches from the UK and Bermuda during emancipation.
Yes.
Because I want to explain to our people how power thinks, how power acts. Powerful people do not have this word in their vocabulary. Hypocrite. It doesn't exist.
Wow.
Because what they do on Monday, because they're powerful and in charge, might have nothing to do with what they do on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And if they're the opposite thing that they did on Monday, it's still the right thing to do. Because they are the power. What they say goes is what goes. What they say matters is what matters. So they can talk about God and patting themselves on the back for emancipation, but they also felt God led them to enslave Africans. And now God is saying we can recognize how bad we were, but we ain't got to pay for it, even though we paid the slaveholder and took us 250 years to pay it off. The debt that they paid the slaveholder. So I don't know, perhaps since we've been on here, the government of Bermuda has released a statement. I doubt it. But this is a real life issue. CARICOM and the UK saw this global UN issue on completely different sides. And whether we're associate or fool, here we are. We got a real life diplomatic incident that thankfully is still theoretical. It's academic, right? We haven't done anything yet. But this is how this might have played out, because we can't speak on foreign issues and we have to disassociate ourselves. It could very well be that the UK uses Bermuda in CARICOM to undermine the strength of CARICOM.
Yes.
Because if, let's say that the governor called the premier in on Friday and said, look, we read this CARICOM statement. You have to put out a statement, disassociate yourselves from it. And we say, but no, this is not even like foreign borders. This is humanity and slavery. It is not.
Right.
That statement will be done if the UK wants that statement done.
Yes.
Okay. So, given how the UK treats black Bermudians through the laws that the governor signed over these centuries, that most definitely exploited, oppressed, suppressed, stole from, did whatever, black Bermudians.
Yes.
Given they are still deporting Windrush generations from England, they don't care.
It's true.
Okay? So, this reparations argument, if I have been saying it, we know who held slaves in Bermuda.
Yeah.
Imagine the governor stopping a law in Bermuda. So what if this government passed the 2026 Bermuda Reparations Act?
Well,
Everybody who was paid at this time from this money must make a payment of this, or in property or in money. If the UK governor didn't sign that into law because of the intertemporal principle, imagine the civil unrest they might be causing. You see, diplomacy, mate, at an international level is about interest. We don't have national interest. And as a result, we can't sit at a table and say we want this or want the other. I was kind of making a joke about it, but I said, Google, down at Southside, St. David's,
Right.
not one person east of Swizzle would have to pay for the internet.
Exactly.
Right? And if you're looking out for the national interest, these are kind of the things that you do.
Yeah.
Right? So, this is what I want to do. I just need to think that straight. I don't know, man. We'll see. The intertemporal principle is something that, they've come up with in terms of a way to ensure you can't, right? If this wasn't illegal back then,
Right.
how come you can make me guilty of it today?
Yes.
Well, I think there's a lot of arguments here to be held, and I'm not in the UN, but when I read all of this stuff, I said, you know something? The crime is on the state,
Yes.
not the individual. Those people are dead. They died a long time ago. Right? The actual people. Yes, they have descendants. Okay,
Right.
And let me just say, I went off on a thing thinking about this stuff and some interesting things that might come from it. But let me just say the reason I raised it
Yes.
is for the CARICOM issue. Okay, we could probably release a statement on our own as an associate member
Yes.
today. We could not join the CARICOM statement as a full member. So even if we went to full member, under the entrustment, right, the UK,
can't. Yeah,
right, the
you
UK
can't.
will, exactly. So they will limit the things that you can say and do, even as a full member.
Well, with you saying that, my expectation is that tomorrow something will be said
By who?
by our government.
Oh, no, mate, they wouldn't do that.
No,
You think
I'm
so?
saying my expectation is that it's just that they will.
Yeah, you think they're waiting to have a cabinet meeting on Tuesday and then decide and then, or you just think, well, why do you think tomorrow? It's been 5 days. It'll be a week on Wednesday.
Well, now that it's been brought to their attention.
How has it been? You told them?
No, you said, let it be us. And here it is today, we're saying, why wasn't this done? Then that would have been the appropriate thing to do.
I'm sorry, really. My apologies. You believe they listen to the show.
No, and there are other people that
Oh, we're
listen
going
to
to
the
tell them.
show.
Oh, okay. No, you said now they're aware.
Right.
No, it's just, you said that now they're aware. I was just saying. So that was it that I wanted to do about the CARICOM issue, and it came up. Something came up. So what I want to do, take a quick little break, right? And they will come back and finish off with a bit of lighter stuff.
Okay.
You good with that?
I'm good with that.
We'll be right back with more of the Corey Butterfield Show here on Magic 102.7 FM.
You know, really, it didn't happen.
What?
It didn't happen. I'm just never gonna get this thing right. I don't.
Right.
Not to worry. But we're back, everybody. Okay. So Billy, I put a lot of information out just now. Did you have anything to say? I have a call or two, but I'll hold off on the calls. I think we probably should discuss a little bit. So just to remind,
Corey.
Okay.
When I said earlier when we first began, I said to you, "Hey, look, unless something comes up, we can move on from CARICOM."
Right.
Oh my!
But I did say something has come up.
If Joe Brown was here, he would have said something like this: My, something did definitely come up. My God, that struck me between the eyes. What you just brought out about the resolution from the UN. Not only that, the impact that has on Black Bermudians.
Yeah.
And man, who is representing us? Who is representing, like you said, and I've said, that in order to build a nation, these issues right here have to be addressed.
Yep. No, I agree. We have a caller.
Sure.
Oh, man, I don't know. I hit the right. Caller, are you there? Really, I'm telling you, man, something is. All right, caller.
How you doing?
All
Yes,
right.
sir.
I'm sorry.
Good evening, gentlemen. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Okay, I clear my throat just a wee bit. Number one, in Parliament in England, I heard that they said that it was not illegal at the time, due to this fact that everybody's looking for this reparation part thing now, and it was not illegal at the time for slavery. But in the British government parliament, they never legalized slavery. There is no document showing that they went to parliament and legalized slavery. They didn't. If you can find a document, show it to me.
Okay. Well, I'll take a look.
Look into that. No, I'm not finished. And it wasn't until themselves who created the Royal African Company that they started to side with the merchants who was already out there involving themselves with slavery. The open door for that to start to happen, for the African nation of people to be taken as slaves or as property out of the motherland of life of Africa, was given to them by a Roman Catholic Pope who wrote the decree for that to happen.
You know, I mentioned that earlier, right?
Well, like I said, I didn't hear you earlier.
Oh, well, so there's why I'm kicking in is because it sounds like you're settling in, and I don't want you to repeat stuff that our listeners already heard.
Okay, well, I don't know. I'm not repeating anything that you're saying. I'm just saying about what I'm saying. I'm not, you might have mentioned that earlier, but I'm just saying when it comes to, this is what I'm saying. When it comes to the actual fact and the reason why we, as the African nation of people, God's first family, has been put in this type of position that we find ourselves in now, started with the Roman Catholic Church. We should be the ones out there actually doing something about their Pope that created this particular type of behavior coming from human beings. That's where it should start, number one. And for the British government to say that it was illegal at the time, it wasn't illegal at the time, well, tell us to show us in Parliament, of their Parliament, where they legalized the taking of slavery of African people was legal, and they made it legal to happen. Tell them to show us that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
No problem. So, in case this was missed, I know the gentleman, I know you just hung up, so I'll just remind you. That papal bull, Dom Diversa, is what I read when I read out the UN resolution. The Ghanaian UN resolution identified that document and even the date of 18th of June 1452. The UK was under that control until the 1600s. Hi, caller, you on the air?
Good morning, gentlemen.
Yes,
Good
sir.
afternoon, I should say.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I think it's sometimes we're going to get some distractions. The point is that, or the issue that is of grave concern to this country is the fact that we have some gatekeepers that we thought were looking out for our best interests had not been doing so.
Mm-hmm.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
I think that the mission should be, I guess it is, that we need to want to do something about that. The distractions, I think, are going to come into play because that's the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
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 But really, I really, once again, have to commend you, gentlemen, for, I guess, your presentation and the manner at which you have enlightened those of us who may not have known.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I
Appreciate
feel
it.
appreciate that.
And the thing is about being focused, and I get that you are, and the world is full of trickery. You're going to get all sorts of distractions coming your way, and I know you know how to handle it, but I just want to sort of make you further aware of that.
I really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yes, sir.
And once again, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Mhm.
So to be in that section, the resolution dealt with the papal bull of 1452, then another one, Romanus Pontifex, in 1455, right?
Yes.
So I went through all of those things that gave the permission, if not
Okay.
the legality,
Okay.
of the slave trade throughout other European states.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, caller, you on the air?
Good afternoon, Mr. Corey. Mr.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for all that you're putting forward for the educators. If I was a lawyer, one of the points I would bring forward, I would say, okay, if that was illegal, then after the abolition of slavery, then you could have easily have told the slave owners, we're not going to pay you all the reparations.
Absolutely. I'm with you.
There you go. Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Absolutely.
I'm not a lawyer, and I can pick that up.
Elementary.
That's because what they claim is loss of property, right?
Yeah.
But they could have said, well, I dare you to sue us.
Exactly.
Right? And they would have had
Yeah,
to,
exactly.
the legality. I love this point, caller, because
Yes.
it flips the script. Now prove humans are only property.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, no, brilliant.
Okay, that was the only point.
Oh, okay, thanks a
Okay,
lot.
thank you.
All right, I like that.
Boy.
All right, oh, yeah, one more call, then Bill. Hi, caller, you're on the air.
Why that fellow still my thought?
I'm so sorry. Maybe you got reparations for it. Call him up. Say, make you owe me.
Why, you know, I'm thinking, if the Anglican Church
Oh,
has acknowledged their involvement
yep.
and
Yeah.
willing to give reparations, how can England now turn around and act like, you know, none of this stuff
Mm-hmm.
was that serious? Not in the church.
Yeah.
They don't even have a conscience in that area.
My goodness. Yeah.
Nope.
Why, I would have heard nothing about what was law or in law.
Exactly.
Oh, wait,
Didn't
there,
matter.
wait. That law back then was in reality.
No.
No, exactly.
What law? That was
Yeah.
God's law.
Exactly.
What? Let me bring my precious on.
I heard your octaves.
There's octaves on there. Those are octaves
Boy,
there.
Yeah. Singing opera today.
People ain't no different.
Yes.
People ain't no different. I'm going
Right.
to tell you right now. The only
Yeah.
difference is time changed, and they have to go along with it to some degree.
Yeah.
But the thinking is, if we just live
Still- you got it.
we would. We would. But I like you guys. Very interested in listening in, and I hope to learn more.
Good stuff.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
Right on.
All right. Take care. Well,
Well,
I mean, like I said, the Bermudian interest will be completely this. England was the slaveholder, we were the slave. Let's just say. So
Yes.
obviously we would have completely different interests on
Exactly.
this, and we have no right to express our. Well, we can now
right.
if our political
Yeah.
leaders so chose. So for the next little while, I got a couple of things here like around the world. Something you wanna say? You look like you're.
Listen.
We don't have to. I can save this. Do you want me to stick with CARICOM?
No, I want to get to that.
No. Well, because let me just tell you one other thing I've done.
Sure.
I did ask, and I wasn't going to tell our listeners this, but I did on the weekend
Yes.
ask Chat GPT, DeepSeek, which is Chinese AI,
Okay.
Ask AI, and Copilot, which is Microsoft's AI. I asked them.
I thought it was me again. Go ahead.
I asked them. This Copilot ain't nowhere as good as you, Billy. Please. I asked this question. Is it better for Bermuda to remain an associate member of CARICOM or better to become a full member?
Let's do it.
No,
Yeah.
but
I'm ready for it. Let's. I want
I
to
said we
hear
were
what.
switching.
I want to hear what AI has to say. No. Forget about what I said.
But I got the stories about Fort Hamilton, the unfinished church.
That can wait. That
man.
can wait. No,
I-
I want to hear what AI has to say.
All right.
Seriously.
Okay. They all said the same thing,
Oh,
pretty much.
okay.
None of them. So if you are like listening and you really okay. Here's Copilot. First, it produced a chart of the trade-offs.
Okay.
So if they become a full member, so it had the main upside, the main downside,
Yes.
and who it likely suits. Okay, so who it's best for, or who it suits.
Right.
So becoming a full member, more say in CARICOM decisions, deeper economic, food security, and regional cooperation benefits. That's the main upside. Main downside, higher fees, more obligations, some loss of flexibility in a few policy areas. Who it likely suits. People prioritizing regional integration, long-term leverage, and diversification. Staying an associate member, main upside. Low cost, low disruption, full control over borders and labor market. Main downside, limited influence, can't fully shape regional rules or access all benefits. Who it likely suits. People prioritizing sovereignty, caution, and status quo. Let me just say two things. One, this is AI, and B, one of the things that I have to stress, because you're going to hear this throughout all this AI, this question of being able to influence regional rules.
Yes.
What regional rules affect Bermuda? Seriously, what rule are we going to impact that affects us?
I don't see any. I don't.
There aren't any.
Right.
So every time AI says it's academic, right? Yes, we will be at the table. Yes, we will be able to influence rules.
Yes.
How relevant are those rules?
Doesn't apply.
So we're going to lord over other countries who have issues that we don't have and tell them how their rules should go, even though we're not even in the area? Okay. This is Microsoft, right? Copilot. What associate membership gives Bermuda now? Limited but useful access. Bermuda already participates in areas such as culture, sport, disaster support, and some technical cooperation. Low financial costs and obligations. Contributions and commitments are smaller. Bermuda can pick and choose more easily. Maximum control. Immigration, labor market rules, and most economic policies remain almost entirely on Bermuda's own terms. Bottom line, associate status is safe, familiar, and low risk, but it keeps Bermuda, in quotes, in the room but not at the table. That's a quote from, say, AI is taking stuff from media, so that's a direct quote from the minister. Okay. What full membership would change? Well, this Copilot only repeated the green paper.
Okay.
So I'm not going to bother with that. And it then higher but still modest cost. Estimated cost bill 2.28 million. They're taking orders from the Gazette, so it's not. This AI isn't. Like I said, this is why when I use AI, it's the information that is easier for me to get as opposed to generating some new kind of analysis. It doesn't work like that for me. So, full member for Bermuda really means fuller participation in the vote, but still with carve-outs and UK-defined limits. That's what Copilot says. The real question, what do you value more? There isn't a clean right answer, only a choice of priorities. If you care most about maximum control over borders and labor, keeping obligations and costs as low as possible, and avoiding any uncertainty of international business, then staying an associate member lines up with those instincts. If you care most about having a real say in regional rules that already affect Bermuda, leveraging Caribbean identity and connections for economic and political clout, using regional partnerships to tackle cost of living, food security, and climate risk, then moving towards full membership is more consistent with that vision. The similar Ask I, the one difference between Ask AI and Copilot was Ask AI mentioned functional cooperation. I keep coming back to that because that is something in CARICOM associate membership that the other associate members do. So it's what they get from CARICOM and what CARICOM gives them. That's a functional cooperation. We haven't yet to exercise functional cooperation. But the case for maintaining associate membership, remaining on this is Ask AI, different AI. Remaining an associate member allows Bermuda to participate in specific regional initiatives such as functional cooperation in health, education, and disaster management without being bound by the full suite of obligations required by a member state. Scholars of small island states often emphasize that asymmetric integration can be a strategic advantage. That's where the integration isn't equal, like full-on embraced. Asymmetrical, right? I'm maybe getting slightly more than you're getting, but we're integrated. Can be a strategic advantage. By retaining associate status, Bermuda avoids the potential legal and administrative complexities of the revised Treaty of Chaguamas, which governs the Caribbean single market and economy. This allows the island to maintain its distinct regulatory environment, which is critical for its international business sector while still benefiting from the diplomatic goodwill and collaborative frameworks provided by CARICOM. That was the case for maintaining. The case for pursuing full membership. Proponents of full membership argue that the current status has reached, it quotes, structural limits. Like I said, it's quoting Minister. As a full member, Bermuda will gain a formal seat at the table in shaping regional policies rather than merely observing them. This could provide a stronger platform for advocating for the interests of small, high-income territories within the wider Caribbean context. It's only us and Cayman. Cayman's already there.
Right.
In fact, Cayman has more functional cooperation. So AI, anyway. You notice, in case you haven't picked up the undercurrent, I am not worried about AI taking my job. In case anybody's out there, not at all. Furthermore, not that I have a job, but if I did. Furthermore, supporters suggest that full membership could facilitate deeper economic integration, potentially opening new markets for Bermudian services and talent, and strengthening the island's global bargaining power on issues like climate change and international tax standards. None of those members are in those discussions.
Right.
The argument here is that in an increasingly volatile global economy, the collective security and political weight of the CARICOM bloc offer a more robust defense than acting in isolation. The decision ultimately hinges on how Bermuda prioritizes its strategic objectives. Economic sovereignty. If the primary goal is to protect the specific tax and regulatory structures that underpin Bermuda's offshore financial industry, remaining an associate member offers greater flexibility. Full membership might necessitate alignment with regional standards that could conflict with Bermuda's existing business model. Regional influence. If the goal is to exert greater influence over regional affairs and ensure the Caribbean voice is heard more effectively in international forums, full membership is a logical progression. It transforms Bermuda from a peripheral partner into a core stakeholder. Administrative and financial costs. Full membership involves financial contributions to the CARICOM Secretariat and the adoption of regional legal frameworks. The government must weigh these costs against the tangible benefits of integration, such as improved trade access and shared regional infrastructure. In summary, the better path is not objectively defined, but is contingent upon whether the Bermudian public and government perceive the future as being more secure through deeper regional integration or through the maintenance of a flexible arm's-length partnership. The current discourse suggests that while the historical and cultural ties to the Caribbean are strong, the practicalities of governance and economic survival remain the primary drivers of the decision-making process. What say you?
I say this is the information age. And guess what? Nothing goes by if you're willing to look for it.
Oh.
And if you're willing to look for it, you will find answers.
Are you telling me off about something?
No, I'm just saying.
I must say, I'm looking at you.
I'm listening.
You're breathing hard. You're ready.
Because I'm worked up. Because we have a situation here where sometimes we're fed things that are not necessarily all the truth.
Right.
Okay? But it's to get across your agenda.
Yes.
And here we are in an information age where anyone, you could do it from your phone, for crying out loud, right? And find out information. I would say, and I'll recommend, that you read for yourself. And just don't take people's word. I don't care who they are. It could be me, it could be Corey, it could be anything. You have it right at your fingertips.